What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel. It is Wednesday. We have fights this weekend and they are absolutely free. We are talking about UFC in Vancouver. We're going to start it off right away on the main card, and the first fight we are talking about is Canada's own Misha Cirkunov, and he is going up against the brute Jimmy Crute. They're both in fantastic tip-top shape, pack a lot of muscle, maybe too much muscle, what could lead to fatigue if it goes to the later rounds, but in this case, kind of negates each other because they both are going to have that similar problem if it comes to those later rounds, which I do not think it will. But Misha Cirkunov has been in the UFC for a long time, fighting contender after contender after contender, and that's one thing we looked at the resumes between him and Jimmy Crute, is Jimmy Crute has not faced the competition, minus Sam Alvey, that Misha Cirkunov is used to facing. Now, Misha Cirkunov, being a well-rounded mixed martial artist, has come up short in 3 of his last 4 outings when he tried to turn it into a slugfest, getting knocked out every single time, but all against top title contenders, and one being a future title contender, Johnny Walker, Volkan Oezdemir, Glover Teixeira. Now, the one thing that Misha Cirkunov should be utilizing in this fight is his ground game. He's got phenomenal jiu-jitsu. He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt out of Extreme Couture, one of the greatest camps that at least Canada has to offer, and he is a much bigger fighter walk-around weight than Jimmy Crute is. Jimmy Crute is a similar style fighter than Misha Cirkunov, but maybe not as decorated on the ground. Keys to victory here is Jimmy Crute wants to keep this standing up. He wants to keep it a battle, back and forth battle, because he's seen Misha Cirkunov's chin fail him in 3 in those last 4 outings. And that's because the one that he did win, he took it to the ground and finished it via submission. When Misha Cirkunov should be taken to this ground, should be pressing against the cage, putting Jimmy Crute in unfamiliar situations, not letting this be one of those fights where he's letting Jimmy Crute initiate his game plan as well, and whoever gets the best of each other wins. No, take him right out of his element and take his tools away from him right from the get-go, press him against the cage, take it down to the ground and pound him, and when that submission makes itself available, because I believe it will, then you take the submission. I have this Misha Cirkunov via 2nd round submission. Next, we have Antonio Carlos Jr. going against Uriah Hall. Now, this is one of those fights that could either be very amazing or absolutely awful, and the reason is styles make fights, and these two have completely different styles. Antonio Carlos Jr., Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, where Uriah Hall, whether it's to demise or not, loves to stand up and bang. He has a fantastic arsenal of strikes. He has that beautiful spin kick we saw in The Ultimate Fighter, and most of his wins that he does have on the resume are all knockouts. But having said that, most of his losses are also knockouts as well. He is one of the most emotional fighters literally in MMA, in my opinion. He gets heartbroken, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and that goes in his performance as well. As soon as he gets caught with something, you can see his demeanor kind of fail, and he feels like he's already failed everybody just by a shot being landed on him, and then he gets taken out of his element and inevitably getting finished. And I kind of see that happening here with Antonio Carlos Jr., because Antonio Carlos Jr., Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and literally one of the best on the ground, also coming from the Ultimate Fighter, but Brazil. He's just so crafty on the ground, and this is something that Uriah Hall is not good at, literally at all. No disrespect. Fact is a fact. We call a spade here, and that's just what it is. So the keys to victory here, plain and simple. Uriah Hall utilized those kicks. I wouldn't get in and do dirty boxing, because Antonio Carlos Jr., although being a ground specialist, he does bear significant size, and if he hits you with one of those uppercuts inside the clinch, you could be falling to your knees. We've seen your chin fail over and over again, and I think that the keys to victory here for Carlos Jr., of course, get in close. Time it though. Don't walk into one of those spin kicks, one of those nasty techniques that Uriah Hall's capable of throwing. Grab him, take it to the ground right away, and turn this into your world. And I see an easy submission victory coming for you, but I do think it's going to take a while to get there. I think they're going to feel the distance for a while, and it could be a few boring minutes, I see, maybe even a few boring rounds. Antonio Carlos Jr. has his submission either in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Now, this next fight is going to be an absolute mess at the heavyweight division. We have the return of Todd Duffee, and he is going up against Jeff Hughes. Todd Duffee wins, losses on his record, it doesn't matter. Every single fight finishes via devastating knockout, whether he is the recipient or the deliverer. But he throws bombs, and no, he is not technical, which is why he's come up short in some of his outings, especially when he fought guys like Alistair Overeem. He gets really emotional as well. He wants to keep that streak alive. Some people, when all they have is those finishes by a certain technique or a certain style, they want to keep that streak going because that is what they are known for. But when you get invested in that, sometimes your peripherals are shut off and you just see one way and one way only, and you open yourself up for opportunities from the fighter, in this case Jeff Hughes, and Jeff Hughes could catch you with one of his knockouts of his own and put you right to sleep, because Jeff Hughes, also not a ground specialist, he likes to stand up and bang as well, so we can promise the crowd one thing: they're going to stand, go toe to toe, and try to take each other's heads off. But Todd Duffee has been out of the game for a long time, and this is not the first time he's done that, where he's had this huge hiatus. And the landscape of the heavyweight division is supremely different. The last time he fought was the loss against Frank Mir, and Frank Mir's been a long time out of the UFC game. Jeff Hughes is a far more active fighter in the UFC, only having 2 fights though. One was via knockout on the Dana White Contender Series, and the other one he lost via split decision, even though Maurice Green, in my opinion, isn't really a game opponent. But neither of the people that Todd Duffee has won against, has beaten. This is going to be a really, maybe not so interesting fight. It's just going to be 2 guys going toe to toe, none of them either ever making a dent in the heavyweight division, no offense, and they're just going to keep swinging until someone gets knocked out. And I think in this case here, Jeff Hughes is going to be the smarter fighter, and I just think he's far more active, and I think Todd Duffee's going to suffer huge from 2 things, one being ring rust, and one from that desire to get the knockout once again and leaving himself open, that being to his demise, and Jeff Hughes getting the knockout via round 1. Next up, we have another fight at the light heavyweight division. We are talking about former title contender Glover Teixeira, and he is going up against Nikita Krylov. A very dangerous matchup. Once again, 2 fighters who are very well-rounded mixed martial artists, unlike the fight we just spoke about before. No disrespect. Or disrespect, whatever. But Nikita Krylov is a far longer fighter than Glover Teixeira. But Glover Teixeira's used to fighting these bigger guys, and Glover Teixeira has phenomenal boxing. Not only that, he is also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but there's no doubt about it. This guy loves to go for the kill, and that is his main desire, is to get that knockout every single time. He's never thinking about submission unless obviously the opportunity presents himself. But Nikita Krylov is no stranger to the ground as well, boasting many victories via submission, and also having those knockouts as well in his resume. He's a longer fighter, so Glover Teixeira, if he's going to want to win this via knockout, he's going to have to close that distance ASAP. He doesn't want to stand on the end of Krylov's punches at all, and these Russians can take a hit. Nikita Krylov has only lost 3 times in his last 20 fights inside the UFC via submission, and we're talking against Ovince St. Preux, former title contender, Misha Cirkunov, top Canadian prospect. But we've seen Glover, especially when they had this big talk about him being the next champion. Chuck Liddell built him up to be this big unbeatable specimen. They would just win that title and never look back, but that failed to happen because Glover Teixeira, when he went to that fight against Anthony Johnson, we saw him get emotional and he got knocked the F out. Same thing happened when he fought Alexander Gustafsson. He gets far too emotional as well while he's swinging, and sometimes he kind of throws his boxing technique out the door, and he is susceptible for getting TKO'd. And of course, Alexander Gustafsson, being longer fighters like Nikita Krylov, which could be a kryptonite, and we're soon going to find out if it is in fact a kryptonite. If I'm going to say who's going to win this fight, I do think it's going to go to decision. I think they're very technical fighters, very long-time vets, and I think they're just going to be cautious and do whatever it takes to get the W. I think it's going to be more of a point sparring match. I don't think they're going to go in for the kill. I think this could turn out actually to be more of a ground and against the cage grappling match than anything, but I do think that Glover Teixeira is on his way out here. I think he's just on the brink of retirement, in my opinion, and he was always one of those fighters that could be a bridesmaid and never a bride, and I see him losing via unanimous decision against Nikita Krylov. Now we're going to go to the main event. The main event is my favorite. I am so excited about it, and this fight literally by itself could hold a pay-per-view in my personal opinion. We have the biggest slugger that honestly the UFC has seen in such a long time. If we're talking technique, not really, but if we're talking about heart, passion, desire, brute strength, and a chin like a son of a bitch, we are talking about Justin Gaethje. He is going up against Cowboy Cerrone. Cowboy Cerrone is making waves in the 170 division. He came up short against Tony Ferguson, but mark my words, that wasn't a supremely close fight, and he did something only an amateur would do, and he even knows that himself. When you have a broken nose, you don't try to snort it, because what you're going to do is you're going to cut your eye to shut. And Donald Cerrone failed to remember that time, and obviously was just caught up in the emotion and the excitement to get back in there, blew his nose without realizing that that's something you should definitely never do. Food for thought for any up-and-coming MMA fighters. And the ref had had no choice but to stop the fight because he literally could not see. It covered his whole vision completely. But before that, he beat 3 top huge prospects, and one of them just fought for the lightweight belt not too long ago against Khabib Nurmagomedov, and we are talking about Al Iaquinta. For that, finishing Alexander Hernandez, and for that, putting away Mike Platinum Perry. Donald Cerrone is still on a high here. He doesn't really classify, nor do I, nor does anybody else, that he really got defeated and outclassed against Tony Ferguson. That wasn't the case. It was just an amateur mistake. Tony Ferguson did great, of course, nothing against him. But Donald Cerrone has proven that he is back home at his 155 weight, and he is making waves, and Justin Gaethje is just another man in front of him. No disrespect to Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is an absolute animal. His last fight, he went up against literally a striking tactician, one of the best kickers, if not the best kicker the UFC has to offer, in Edson Barbosa, and he put Edson Barbosa away. That's one thing that Donald Cerrone's gonna have to be wary about here. Donald Cerrone's chin is not the best. His kickboxing is amongst the best, but Justin Gaethje can wear multiple shots whilst trying to get in and throw that bomb and catch you, like he did against Barbosa. So please be aware of that. Keys to victory for you, Donald Cerrone, is keep it at a distance. Use your kickboxing, and I say aim for that body all day, because I think that's how you're gonna put Justin Gaethje away. Please, Cerrone, you are not on your way to an easy road to victory here. Just because you have far better skill set than Justin Gaethje doesn't mean you have this in a bag. He has something that not a lot of people do, and that's unprecedented heart and just aggressiveness. He is mean. He is a brawler, and this is something you're gonna have to be weary about. Justin Gaethje, your keys to victory are simple. Just go in there, close the distance, and make this into a dogfight, because I think that Cerrone is not gonna be able to handle that when you press him up against the cage and feed him with dirty shots, dirty elbows, and just throw those big bombs. He's gonna get very, very demotivated when he sees that you can take those shots. Donald Cerrone, keep it to the body, son. If I'm gonna have to call it, I can never go against Donald Cerrone, because no matter what, no matter who he's facing, Donald Cerrone is so crafty, so smart, and such a fighter and such a genius sometimes that I have to go with Cowboy Cerrone. I think he's going to take Justin Gaethje to a later rounds, though. We're going to call it the 3rd round, and he's going to finish him with a body shot, take him to the ground, and TKO him, and that's going to be the end of the day. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Get ready to tune in for a free fight card in UFC Vancouver, where a lot of these amazing up-and-coming Canadian UFC fighters are ready to shine. And we got an amazing fighter that came out of BTC. In his last fight, he went up against Nordine Taleb, and Nordine Taleb just thought it would be cool to like hump him to decision. But we're talking about Kyle Prepolec. Dude's an absolute beast, and I can't wait to see him on the undercard this weekend, soon to make the main card. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the 6th round. I love you guys. We are going to see you next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment below, leave a comment, negative, positive, doesn't matter. Share it to all your friends, fans, enemies. They all need it. Peace out.